Chairman.
Thank you. We'll now recognize Mr. Banks from Indiana for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thanks to each of you for being here. I know you've already answered many questions, but Mr. Sims, you have a unique perspective as a labor lawyer and a former college athlete. From your perspective, I think you've already answered this, but would college athletics be able to sustain itself if student athletes became employees?
Thank you for the question. You know, one of the stats that I included in my written testimony that I think is very powerful is we've already seen how increased costs or less revenue has affected college sports. You have to look no further than the COVID-19 pandemic issues that colleges dealt with. And in total, excuse me, 112 Division I sports were cut by 35 schools, and 77 still haven't been reinstated. And between March 11th and November 6th of 2020, a total of 352 NCAA sports programs were cut. And the vast majority of those programs were Olympic sports. So given your question, given the administrative costs that could come down the line and potential increased costs if a single unit or a couple units were able to bargain for increased compensation or increased benefits, I'm concerned that these numbers will start showing themselves again.
If student athletes did become employees, could universities implement non-compete clauses restricting them from transferring, technically?
Thank you for the question. I certainly think that's possible. As I discussed previously, collective bargaining brings a lot of uncertainty. So whether employees can transfer, whether they're not allowed to transfer, we don't know how that's going to play out in a collective bargaining environment.
Could student athlete employees be subject to performance reviews?
Well, based on my experience in negotiating collective bargaining agreements and dealing directly with labor unions, certainly performance reviews are possible. It again depends what's negotiated into the collective bargaining agreement. But as I had previously stated, when I played professional hockey for 3 years, I played on 9 different teams. I got cut, I got called up, I got sent down, and certainly some of those were performance reasons. And those are the type of things that I would expect to see if a university was compensating student athletes for their performance and their playing proficiency. I could certainly see those type of issues coming up.
Could student athlete employees be terminated for poor play or laid off for poor performance?
That's certainly a possibility and something that universities would want to include in a collective bargaining agreement, especially if they do agree to certain additional benefits.
Could student athletes who are allowed to transfer, could they immediately play for a new school under current rules? They could now.
Yes, so when I
But
when
that
I
could
played,
be changed if they become student athlete employees.
Sure, under a collective bargaining agreement, the transfer portal, there would be questions about what that would be. Right now, they can transfer and immediately play for another school. But if you have a collective bargaining agreement with your school, there may be a provision in there that prevents the student athletes from doing it.
I imagine the same answer would apply to this. If they became employees, could there be a financial penalty for athletes that transfer to another school?
Again, that's possible, depending on what's in the collective bargaining agreement.
If a student athlete employee was unionized, how would that impact the process of transferring to another school?
I think it would impact it in the sense that we talked about, that the NCAA currently has the transfer portal where students can transfer freely and play immediately as opposed to sitting out a year, which was the previous rule. And an individual collective bargaining agreement may render that transfer portal ineffective for that.
And how many years of eligibility will athletes have as employees? You and I are making the same point.
That's a really good question. I don't know what the years of eligibility would be. Would they try to negotiate more than 4 years of eligibility in a contract? That's possible.
They get paid, so they might want to stick around longer. You and I are making the same point. Today's student athletes have a lot of flexibility. And if they become unionized or collective bargaining under this situation, we're taking away, as it seems to me, you can disagree, we're taking away a lot of flexibility from student athletes.
And it's not only the flexibility, it's the student athletes coming into the school and being potentially subject to that collective bargaining agreement that they never agreed to, right? Or choosing not to go to that school because they have a collective bargaining agreement and that school potentially suffering.
Seems
in
like,
competitive
seems
work.
like we're opening Pandora's box. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
Thank you.